Good evening and welcome to this edition of Casa Dialogues. We all know Maduro is out, but what is next? That's the million-dollar question. And there are a lot of issues about what is next. And to discuss all these issues, I have with me a very eminent set of people. Let's welcome them first. I have Brigadier Arun Sahgal and of course Gen Gautam Moorthy. Ambassador Ashok Sajjanhar will be joining us shortly. But to set the stage and let things, flow as they say, we know that the military action is over. That got over within 2 hours, right? And by that now, every detail of the military action, everyone has known the pluses, minuses, what we have to learn from them. All this is done, but the politics have started. And I was just discussing with others. I've never seen a war or arrest or whatever it is, whatever you call it, an operation of this kind, which has so many loose ends, right? Whichever end you touch is loose at this point of time. There's the politics of oil, there's the politics of petrodollar, there's the geopolitics of USA, Russia, and China, and then there's a politics of a domino effect which could happen with Cuba, Greenland, Colombo, and don't forget Iran. Right? Everyone is feeling unsafe that if this can happen to that country, which is thousands of kilometers away from USA, it can happen to us also. And there's some vague things coming up. Why don't we lift Asim Munir and lift that old guy, that 84-year-old Koot in Bangladesh? Okay, and then of course, uh, so all this is on the cards. And then there's the politics of Venezuela itself. What will happen to Venezuela going ahead? Because what happens to Venezuela? Which kind of a government is there? Will that stabilize? Not stabilize? How? Because we all know that the Americans, they go in fast, they come out late, and invariably when they go in, it's victorious. When they come out, it is always defeat. That's history. So we don't know which side this whole story is going. In fact, to a large extent, we don't know why this has been done also. People who have gone into it also probably don't know how they have done it. So this is where it is. So I'd request at this point of time, Gen Gautam Moorthy and Brigadier Arun Sahgal to put out their points of view, whichever way they look at it. And when Ambassador Sajjanhar comes, we'll take his view also. I'll start with General Gautam Moorthy. Sir, over to you.
Good evening, General Shankar. Good evening, Brigadier Arun Sahgal sir. Good evening to to the audience. Thank you for this wonderful introduction. And of course, the military aspects, as you mentioned, are covered. But what is actually this Operation Absolute Resolve? Why was he removed? Uh, Mainly, the US is saying that he was a threat to us. Way back in 2015, that is almost that's 10 years ago, uh, President Obama had put out sanctions on him. In 2020, he was indicted by the grand jury for narco terrorism. Colombia is a key transit hub for cocaine, is what has been said. I just heard the US ambassador to the United Nations speak at the UN Security Council, and he gave out these reasons. He says he was being indicted by grand jury. He was picked up uh, by our agents, not by the army. So, what has this resulted in? Let's first take the overall picture. We all believe, General Shankar did mention it, that Venezuela got aligned too closely with Russia, China, and Iran. And they were a threat to what the US considered regional stability. Mr. Trump has gone on record to say that yes, we've gone in there for the oil. Venezuela holds 20% of the oil reserves in the world. And although it is heavy crude, they have plants, the US has plants on its east coast that can refine this oil. The mineral wealth of Venezuela is supposed to be as much, if not more, than Africa. So that's another point. It's a huge resource rich country which was being poorly managed. The other thing that has probably upset the US is that Venezuela was in talks with this alternate currency called the unit for oil payments. It's been in talks with Russia, with China, with Iran. And now that this has happened, the US allies are split. There is huge condemnation in the United Nations Security Council. This so-called invasion will have an effect on Cuba and other Latin American countries. The left and other non-aligned countries are also worried. They see this as an act of strategic opportunism. It's something like unrestrained foreign policy. I will do what I want. But if you look at it, Mr. Trump has followed in the footsteps of his eminent predecessors, starting with, I'm not even going back to the 50s and 60s, but I'm going back to the 80s. Ronald Reagan got Noriega picked up from Panama after an invasion. That fighting lasted for over a week. George Bush got Saddam. The George Bush Senior got Saddam first, and finally George Bush Junior actually went in to take Saddam out. Obama, we all know about Gaddafi, whom he went and got Gaddafi out of there. So, but the long-term outcomes is that the US has proved once again that it has the will and capacity to take on its so-called enemies. You may have the will, you may desire to take action on the enemies, but the US has proved time and again that it will do so. It has had a destabilizing effect on the world order. Today, the US cannot lecture Russia on what it has done in Ukraine. And this will have an effect in the sense that many regional strongmen in various regions of the world may consider it possible for them to overwhelm a weaker neighbor. But as you said, what is absolute resolve? Was it an invasion? There are no troops on the ground. As we see it, it is basically the US has kidnapped the president of another country. Now, whichever way you play it out, he may be an autocrat, the US has its own reasons. But this kidnapping could not have taken place but for an inside job. Was it a palace coup? The vice president has been sworn in pretty swiftly, and she has said that Maduro is still our president. The same structures remain. The US, General Shankar mentioned, there is no clarity that has emerged how the US is going to run Venezuela. He is not, Trump is not backing Maduro. He has allowed Delcy to take over. This was a very high risk operation, and this will have a consequence on the internal stability of Venezuela. We all know that the economy is absolutely down in the dumps, inflation is high, the elites are actually running the show, a whole lot of generals who are being looked after. That is how he managed to avoid a coup so far. But who's played into the hands of America, or what the CIA did? This is all, nobody knows. There's all kinds of speculation, as General Shankar pointed out. But the same party is there, the same cabinet is there, the same army is there. Trump's concerns are basically on migration, illegal migration and drugs. And we will now see as to how this carries forward, where this goes. But overall, I think this is the broad picture that I've been able to give. Back to you, General Shankar.
Thanks a lot, sir. Yeah, at the end of what you have spoken, all of us remain confused as to what's happening, like everyone else. It's not a punt on you, but that's how it is. Uh, Thanks for covering. You covered largely the incident and the internal aspects of Venezuela. We'll go forward on this. I would like, to mention that this whole story has major international repercussions. The tremors are being felt far and wide. I'm sure Brigadier Sahgal will cover many aspects of this international repercussions. Brigadier Sahgal, sir, all over to you. Please carry on.
Okay. Uh, Thank you very much. I'm honored to be part of this esteemed panel. Uh, I think it's a very consequential event which has happened in the early 2026. I don't know what this year beckons for us. If this is the kind of the scenario that we have been thrust with on the first week of January, there are some fundamental issues that we need to take cognizance of. Uh, the rational logics are being created, they are being developed, they are being uh, uh, you know uh, created from the point of view of how to rationalize this action of the United States. But there are some fundamental aspects which we need to take cognizance of. One is the US has used intensive military power to overwhelm an independent nation and capture and kidnap their leader. He has given an idea of what he had in mind when he talked about his Western Hemispheric policy and his own conception of Monroe Doctrine. Basically, he wants to ensure a couple of things. One of the aspects is that there have been a large amount of presence, particularly presence of Chinese and the Russians, and the political leanings of these regimes in Central America. They have been all on the leftist. They have not been very attuned to what they call Western-oriented democratic systems. You see what happened to Brazil earlier, because the last president of the Brazil was given a sentence. President Trump put on a 50% tariff on that country, but they didn't get coerced. But the issue over here is that is this as an action to to once again reiterate American domination and to tell the world that the United States has the capacity and the capability to intervene anywhere it feels that its interests are jeopardized. That's issue number one. The second is it has also indicated a swift use of power. But unlike others, I am not very enamored by this swift use of power, primarily because of the fact that it is in its own backyard. This is a weak country, although it's got a large standing army, but we all know how deeply penetrated it was by the CIA and others. I mean, everybody is purchasable for money over there. All you have to give the right amount of money. Like New York Times story says, this guard who sort of let the open the gate and allowed the American Special Forces to enter was bought over because of his child sickness. So this is where the whole thing lies. The consequences of this are important. The fundamental consequence of this is that America is now trying to shape the Latin American politics to its own perception and its own desire. Be rest assured, Venezuela has gone, Cuba is on order. Cuba is the next in line. Uh, the Michael Rubio is who the Secretary of State of the United States is a Cuban. He is very clear that Cuba has to go, and Cuba is intrinsically linked to Venezuela. So Cuba has no oil. The Venezuelans were providing it oil. It had no resources. There are about couple of lakhs of Cubans who are working in Venezuela, and the money which they send home is propping up the economy. So the regional orientation of Latin America is being changed to American interests by the present administration. And in this, I dare say, Mexico and Canada better watch out about what happens to them. So this is one aspect. This is the broader aspect. The second aspect is the oil and other issues. everybody is there is plenty of so much is out there in the open space. There's no point in talking about it except for two, three important things. One is that this is a hard crude. Okay, this heavy density crude, which is not easily extractable, and even in extraction, it is a very costly extraction. Number two, there are only about 8 refineries in the Gulf of America which still are using this oil. Majority of this oil is being used for diesel and other issues for the American internal economy. So, to that extent, this requirement of this heavy crude will only support part of the American establishment. Number three issue is the Chinese, and to an extent even India, we had developed heavy crude refineries. Jamnagar refinery, incidentally, is a heavy crude refinery. So, to that extent, it is also a denial of this crude to the markets, and in a sense, putting sanctions of sorts on those countries which were dependent on them by taking over these resources. Having said that, it is only a desirable aim of the United States. United States cannot, and I repeat, cannot get adequate oil from these trillions of dollars which they're talking about in a hurry. It takes them years to extricate that oil. We do not know what the structures are going to be. So the oil is not an issue. Something which is rightly mentioned by General Murthy is the unit is the issue. That is the shifting of balance of payments or payments of petrol from dollar to units. Now, thing has happened is that BRICS has created $150 billion global fund for payment of this. Now, this global funds is coming with sovereign guarantees. Unlike, unlike in the past, in the case of Ukraine, where 300 odd $billion of the Russians were served, which were lying as in the American as well as mostly in the European banks, have been served by them under the law that Russia has invaded a sovereign country. Now this cannot happen in this case. So it is the beginning. It is not. I'm not even saying that it has started. It's the beginning of a new trend, which the Americans were very uncomfortable with when they knew that this is going to catch fast. There is yet another angle to it. That angle is the G20. You are aware of the fact that the G20, the South Africans have not been, the last chairman of the G20 summit is not being invited by United States. It has barred them from entering. It is creating a new Eurocentric club of East Asian, East European countries to become a new spokesperson or a voice for G20, undermining the global South. So there are all lot of these things are coming about as part and parcel. So it's not a simple thing about Venezuela, but it is indicative of the larger American policy thinking to ensure unipolarity, global unipolarity, undermine all challenges that are coming, and also, and I repeat, also to ensure that the two major contenders for global power are also undermined in this by this development. First is China. Let me talk a little bit about China. China has $77 billion investment, and only this year in August it invested $1 billion in a refinery in Venezuela. Number two, it has invested heavily in critical minerals, and and what is known as it is all weather friendship with Venezuela on the lines similar to Pakistan. It's an all weather friend of Venezuela. And all weather friendship of Venezuela is that it is responsible for its security, economic, trade, and technological support to this country. Earlier, it was said that it will support them in any kind of adverse security conditions, but now the Chinese have cleverly said that it never meant a military partnership. We are not going to be committed. I mean, bottom line is that China is unlikely to get involved in Venezuela. So, what does that basically means is that Chinese investments and Chinese interests, not only in Venezuela, but entire region, particularly starting from Mexico downward, down from Brazil, down to Argentina, and not so much on Argentina, but certainly in there as well as in Cuba, are all getting undermined. So, in one go, what the United States has told is that you might be a global player, but you don't have the global heft. You do not have the power projection capability. You do not have the capacity to safeguard your interests. So this is an issue which is going to reverberate quite a lot. Similarly with Russia, a lot of us are talking about Russia as an important partner in this global system. It is. It's a major power, highest number of nuclear weapons, strong military capabilities, but just like China, its ability to project power is very limited. So the reality which the Americans have shown to the world is this, and this is something which we need to take cognizance of, is the fact is that with their 170 odd bases globally, given their partnerships and the way they have structured their relationships all around the globe, they have the capability and the propensity and the political will to project power to secure their interests. So this is something which we need to take cognizance of. Coming to Indo-Pacific, as far as this issue is concerned, people are saying it is correlated to Taiwan. It allows Taiwan, China to do this or that to Taiwan, etc. That may be true. Chinese just not carried out a major exercises of isolating Taiwan and creating a maritime exclusion zone, etc. But the point at issue is that Taiwan has also got $11 billion dose of armament from Americans. A. B. It has got strong American facilities lying next door to it. And intervention by China on its own and ability to shape that intervention into his own interest is going to be contested by the Americans. So the question that comes about is this: is what is the capacity of the capability of the Chinese military power? In my view, as far as China is concerned, Chinese military heft is by and large restricted to the continental domain up to a point, and in the maritime domain up to the South China Sea. It still hasn't have the capability of crossing the Malacca Strait to project power, despite the fact that it's got 3 aircraft carriers, 4 aircraft carriers which can deploy them. But given the kind of systems that have been used and the kind of capability, electronic warfare, cyber, and space-based systems that are available, these carriers who operate on their own in large maritime spaces of the Indian Ocean is an issue that we need to rethink ourselves and war game these issues to understand the capacities and the capabilities. So this is one aspect. Russia stuck in Ukraine, have all the capabilities, but doesn't have the power projection capabilities. No, it doesn't. And the last issue is, which I'm going to talk about, is the Arctic. Now, like you said, as part of the domino effect, Greenland, Canada are all on notice that the Americans are going to push for that. And suddenly I find that the Europeans are not talking less about Ukraine, but certainly trying to safeguard their interest in Denmark and along the Arctic. So what we are seeing is a major shift. All these are things are moving parts at this point in time. Nothing is sacrosanct at this issue. All these are moving parts. So my point from Indian perspective is that India has to take cognizance of these developments? When we talk about Indian strategic autonomy, it is not that we want to play one power against the other. It is to leverage the contradiction in the global power system to our advantage. As we talked about in our NSS discussion, we learned that despite the fact that NSS, in terms of its written words, has by and large tried to undermine India's strategic construct, but in its nuancing of his Quad policies, his regional maritime policies, his regional security policies, it 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 looks upon India to play an important role. So the logic for India basically is to maintain its strategic autonomy, and I talk about strategic autonomy like I just now mentioned, to leverage its interests, taking cognizance of contradictions in the global equations, and work towards its own interests. India does not have to follow anybody. There was the other day a talk about realignments of the RIC. Uh, I it looks interesting when you look at it from a flimsy point of view, from a peripheral point, not flimsy, sorry, peripheral point of view. That it's a good idea, but we need to be little concerned about the capacity, like I mentioned about our other two partners, both China and the Russians, to be able to exercise power and influence in the manner which the Americans can do. So, bottom line for us is remain engaged. We 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 do not necessarily have to agree with what they do, but we have to remain engaged in a manner to safeguard our interests and take assistance and help and leverage other players, both China, Russia, to an extent that they support, they are seminal in our security, our diplomacy, and our trade and economic interests. I'll stop here. And I've noticed Master Sajjanhar is here, so he'll probably be giving much more detailed, nuanced understanding of this whole issue. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. At this point, I'd like to welcome Ambassador Sajjanhar. Thanks for joining in, sir. Honored. Uh, we've been going around. General Gautam Moorthy has given his assessment of the whole situation. So has Brigadier Sahgal. Uh, I request your views. And like I told this thing, this whatever has happened is very significant globally. It's got far-reaching effects, and the ripples are being felt around the globe in multifarious kind of conditions. And one thing is for sure that this entire incident, and when you combine it with the Iran, whatever happened, the Iran-Israel war and the American action out there, America has proven that the American military might has got no, competitor at this point of time. And especially since Chinese weapon systems have been found out. Chinese weapon systems have been found out in other places also, right? In fact, it's a low. The way I look at it, it's my personal view. America has shown a low-cost reality check on its military might to everyone. And of course, the second issue is about oil. While everyone is concentrating on Venezuelan oil and what America will do or not do, it's my personal opinion. Uh, this whole story is about control of oil, control of energy linked to the petrodollar, because it's not only a matter of now controlling the Canadian oil; it's also a matter of controlling Venezuelan oil, which is the largest reserve on earth still, well into the future, and the Middle East. We shouldn't forget that in the Middle East, USA controls virtually everything from the Mediterranean to the Arabian Sea, and with Iran on the brink. So there's a huge issue of oil and the petrodollar and things like that. Like I said, the way we go is huge. So with this as a small background, may I request your views on this whole story and where it's going? Because the military aspect is over, and done. The politics and the diplomacy are to play out. And I'd request your views, and please don't restrain yourself to whatever you heard or whatever I've said. You have a free space to say what you have to, sir. Over to you.
Well, thank you very much, General Shankar, and for inviting me, and thank you very much, General Moorthy. Also, I'm very sorry I'm late because I thought we were starting at 8 o'clock, so I joined well in time for that. But maybe, obviously, I was a little mistaken. The meeting seems to have started quite some time ago, maybe at 7:30 or something. Because had I known, I would definitely have joined
No,
at
it's okay, sir.
7:30.
It doesn't matter. We are
Yeah.
grateful that you're here.
No, 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 no. It's a pleasure for me. So first, let me make a couple of comments on the remarks, General Shankar, that you have made. Very important remarks. Because I would have loved to hear what you said earlier, General Murthy and Brigadier Sahgal, because I very much value your comments in this. But if you permit, on the military aspects, what you mentioned about the military might that it has. Uh, United States has demonstrated its military might that it is without any equal and what it has been able to achieve. I would definitely say that it has been able to achieve a great deal by what it has been able to do. What they say, this fifth generation cyberkinetic fusion, etc. I think all the military people, the forces people understand all these things much better. But I would also like to mention that this is one instance where it has succeeded. But if you look at so many other instances in more recent past, whether it is Afghanistan, the withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, I mean, that was shameful, that was deplorable. And that was also, you might call it that it was the political directions that were given, how it was, but it was all managed by the US military. Also, the manner in which they conducted themselves for about 20 odd years in Afghanistan, all told. Meaning, if you look at all these things in post Second World War, look at 1961, the Bay of Pigs, meaning the failure, the huge failure. In Vietnam, the huge failures. In Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Libya. Meaning, please tell me one area where the US military has been able to acquit itself creditably and well. I think they have uh, failed miserably, and this could have gone the 1980 way of, when Jimmy Carter tried to extricate the hostages from Iran. And what a dismal failure that was, what an embarrassment it was. So, the point I'm making is that after all these many years, the United States maybe just got lucky and they were not really, they didn't have to deal with the latest defense technologies that are available if they were on real, in a real conflict kinetic situation. I don't know whether they really would have been so very successful or not. The second point is in terms of uh, I think what the United States, it talks about narco terrorism, it talks about restoration of democracy, etc. In that he was his election was fraudulent. That is what many of the other Western countries say. But again, it has gone on the pretext, the United States has gone to many countries on the pretext of establishing democracy, whether it was in, again, same names, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, etc., all these places. And look what it has been able to do, even as far as Syria is concerned. Meaning, it's put a terrorist on the throne of Syria. It is something similar to removing Saddam Hussein in Iraq and look at the instability and the violence and the conflict that has taken place there. Also in Libya. So I think it is uh, democracy is definitely not an issue. Narco terrorism. What I understand, what I hear is that there are other countries which are much larger perpetrators of that, which have a much larger contribution in terms of funneling these cocaine and other things, Colombia being one. And Venezuela is an offender, but not that large an offender. But going there is basically, I think, because of assets. And one of the reasons which I don't think has been mentioned all that much, but which I think is important, is because it is United States currently has debt of about $37 trillion, which means its total GDP is about 28, 30 trillion, and its debt, outstanding debt, is much more than even that. Even servicing of that debt requires, I don't have the figures with me, maybe I will try to work it out, but it is huge. So, what it really means is it needs more money, it needs more assets, and maybe that is what it is after. Although this, General Shankar, flies in the face of the earlier wisdom and information that what was mentioned, that once the United States had become self-sufficient as far as oil is concerned, it was able to get all that shale gas and shale oil, then its interest in the Middle East had come down, because rather than being an importer, it was now a very significant exporter of oil. So that is why it was withdrawing from the Middle East. That is what it was said. But right now, it is coming there again in a big way. Basically, because I think it wants control of assets, and assets because it is really becoming a bankrupt economy. Its debt levels are so high, and servicing is such a challenge, and there is nothing really happening there. Although I must qualify that also, General Shankar, by saying that the latest figures of the US economy appear to be very encouraging. You know, everyone, all the commentators, all the analysts and economists were saying that all the policies that Mr. Trump is following in terms of getting, raising tariffs, so the shortages will increase, the uncertainty will increase, inflation will go up, productivity will come down, and GDP will come down. But the results, what we have, are, it's shown about 4% GDP. So if anyone on this panel or in the audience can say something about it, I'll be very happy to hear that one. The What it appears is, as far as you mentioned about oil also, and that is something that has been mentioned. It's about 300 whatever billion barrels of oil that Venezuela has, and very little of that is being exploited. And what Mr. Trump said, I'll just mention two particular aspects and then I'll stop. One is in terms of prospecting and drilling that oil. And this prospecting basically would be very, very difficult, because what is mentioned is, number one, that it is heavy crude. And there are not very many refineries in the world that are equipped to refine this heavy crude. And most of them are equipped for dealing with the light crude that comes from the Middle East. I am not an expert on this. I don't have this thing, but if there are any comments either way, I think it will be useful to know. The second, which I know for a fact now, because I was till 10 days ago, I was in South America on a lecture tour. So I spoke to people also there. And there is a big river there, Orinoco River, which runs through Venezuela. And I understand that much of the oil reserves are under the basin of this Orinoco River. It is one of the longest rivers, I think, next only to the Amazon, of course, is the longest there, but maybe the next one is Parana, and Orinoco is the third one. So, getting oil from there, prospecting oil from there is going to be very difficult. In the past, also, when efforts have been made, when attempts have been made to get the oil from there, John Shankar, the environmental activists have been very active, and they have made sure that there is not significant exploitation or mining of that done. Also, I'm told it is very difficult to get oil from the basin of the Orinoco River. So this is something we'll have to see what some of the people who seem to be in the know of things, they say that even if oil has to be drilled, it is going to, number one, need a lot of investment. I don't know whether under these circumstances, whether the United States will be able to get security, to ensure security and peace and stability in that area. And if that doesn't happen, whether the businesses, the US businesses, would be willing to put in all that much of money, all that much of investment there. And number two, that it is, even if the investment comes, it is going to take a very long time for this projects to be realized and for oil to. And of course, one doesn't really know what is going to be the uh, the fate of fossil fuels, because Mr. Trump, of course, is very gung ho on drilling. But if there is a change in administration, change in government, and they go in for renewables, they go in for green energy, then what is the last point there is, I think, even if oil is not there in such significant quantities, there are a large number of other elements, I'm told, whether it is lithium, or it is gold, or it is iron ore, or coal, or some other critical minerals which are present in significant quantities, which could be used, which could be uh, profitably, they could be mined, and they could be the real. I think it will depend upon whether there can be security and stability in Venezuela now. And at the moment, it appears to be a question mark, because although Madam Delcy Rodriguez has been sworn in as the acting president, there are challenges to her position, both from Miss Maria Machado, the Edmundo Gonzalez, who was the contender last year, and even as far as the United States, there's a flip flop on their side. Sometimes they say we are going to work with her. Sometimes they say we are going to run that you know administration ourselves. So I think much will really hinge on what happens there in the coming days. And I think in our discussions forward, maybe we can, if you think it's right, we could discuss what Russia might wish to do, get there. China, we have had the initial discussions in the UN Security Council, and what India's stance should be, particularly in its capacity as the chair of the BRICS, which it is going to host this year in 2026. Jal Shankar.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot, sir. Covered a lot of points. I think what you said about the US economy is very right. Their economy, I remember seeing a chart about 10, 15 days back in the Washington Post, where it was a bright picture which was being painted. And for Washington Post to paint a bright picture means a lot, right? Uh, that's the thing. The second thing, of course, is the stocks are at a all-time high. They're running big. The issue about crude, Venezuelan crude, at this point of time, 80% of the Venezuelan crude is all going to China. In Shandong, they've set up teapot, what they call teapot refiners. It is something like this is the, brew, and they put water there, whatever they do. It's called the teapot refineries in Shandong, which distribute the products internally. Now, the thing is, the person who will get hit most by China, by not getting Venezuelan crude, is China, 80%. Now, it's not that crude is going to stop from what one can make out. It's only that China has to pay more. Willy-nilly, China has to pay more even to Iran. That's why I invoked Iran is also on the edge, and energy control is total at this point of time with Mr. Trump. And my guess is that as we go by, as you get into the AI era, the requirement of energy is only going to increase. Right. And the point which you brought out is very important about the Orinoco belt. And I don't think that oil will ever be recovered, at least not in this century, maybe next century. But the amount of critical minerals which are there are game for a person like Trump. But all this is, to be very honest, at this point of time, building castles in the air because the politics has not played out. You just, I will come, sir. The politics has not played out at all. We don't know how the politics, because, like I said, the military business is over. The politics has not played out, and everyone is reaffirming where he is. And one thing which Brigadier Sahgal earlier did point out, and I think I'm reiterating, in the globe, if there are any, if there's one country who can do power projection all over, it is USA. China is a restrictive quantity. It can't even cross the first island chain as of today. And Russia has virtually got no power projection capability. And with Trump's foray into Greenland and opening of the Arctic routes, maybe we don't know when. So things are, it is as if a certain amount of mercantilism is going on where USA is trying to use its military might to, get back its mojo, notwithstanding the failures. Because one interesting thing about uh, the US military might, which I'd like to point out, is they don't mind failures. We might classify it as a failure. For them, it's a transaction. They get over the failures and they're not shy of using this military might. They have the political will and the audacity to do that. So even if they get a 50% success rate, they feel they're okay. So I think we have to look at the outcomes in the case of how America goes about doing things. But that's how they've been doing, and we have to play the game, right? So I'll get to that. We have to play the game the way it is. And how do we play it? How do we handle Russia and China and this budding RIC and things like that? So this is something which we need to talk of. I'd like General Gautam Moorthy, sir, if you could come. But before that, for 1 minute, I'll get Brigadier Arun Sahgal. So you had a point to mention. Please do come up.
No, no. Okay, so what I was trying to get across is this: is that what has happened in Venezuela is basically a kidnapping has happened. The Venezuelan state remains intact. There are no boots on the ground of the Americans as yet. They are trying to create a scenario in which they are picking up people, picking up sides, etc. And there was a very interesting commentary yesterday by people who know the insides and who know the system, is that there is a huge amount of anger built up within and all elements, all sides of the spectrum have come together for national pride. See, please understand that. And it has been a standing operational procedure of the Americans to initiate conflict, but they do not know how to manage conflict. They do not know. He told. I also mentioned, which the ambassador has also mentioned. The fact of the matter is that they have gone in happily and come out crying, and that's the story of their life. The same story applying everywhere. But the problem is that they have continue to have the propensity to use power at the drop of a hat. They do not stop there, and you rightly said they don't mind failures. They've done it in Gaza. They did it in Iran. They've done it in Nigeria recently. They're doing it in Syria. They've done it now in this place. They continue to do it. So the issue basically for people like us to understand is that how do you deal with trigger happy country like the United States of America, which is as far as India is concerned, from Indo-Pacific perspective, they are not a major power anymore. They cannot leverage credible military power which will always be contested. Like I said, Indo-Pacific is China's backyard, particularly east of Malacca Strait, up to the first island chain. Mind you, it cannot take over the first island chain. I concede that. I mean, it will have to fight for it. But the fact of the matter is, the Chinese influence pervades economic, political, trade, everything of pervades. So while we look at American action as a very exalted kind of an action or a game changing action, we have to sit down and reconsider, recalibrate, is it really a game changer and what are the consequences? I mean, that's something which we need to look at, and that's an important point I just thought I'll make. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I'll get back to you. General Murthy, sir, your views on how India should approach this. This whole story, what's the fallout and what is it there for India?
Thank you very much. I think, sir, the point that you made is that US is not afraid of taking risks. I agree, but at the same time, insofar as Venezuela is concerned, and I'll just come back to India in a moment, if by chance the US had a different president, in the sense if it was Kamala Harris who was president instead of Donald Trump, I do not think this operation would have taken place in the first place. That aside, how should India deal with it is the way India is dealing with Trump. We agree to go up to a certain place in our trade talks, but no further. India, I think, despite all the criticism against our foreign policy, I think our foreign policy is holding its own in a very, very turbulent world. And hats off to our PM, the EAM, and the entire cadre of our foreign IFS experts who know they are very nimble footed. They know they are navigating. There's nothing that is shown now. They're handling Mr. Trump, handling the US by looking at what Mr. Trump wants. Because Mr. Trump, we all know, is transactional. He has said so in no uncertain terms. And when you're dealing with a transactional person, you're dealing with it differently. When you're dealing with China, that has been pressing against you, and especially post Galwan, and especially when our trade is to high volumes, we are yet keeping China in check. Our friendship with Russia is not at the cost of our relationship, a strategic partnership with the US. So I think, and as far as the European Union is concerned, as far as the UK is concerned, India is maintaining our relationships with all these countries. And in G20, we are accepted uh, as a force to reckon with. So if you look at all, except the places India has problems, and Ambassador will, I'm sure, agree with me, is with our two immediate neighbors, which was a part of India once upon a time, and then partition happened, and then 1971 happened. We are having trouble on both these areas. But otherwise, the rest of it, I think India is managing pretty well. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, sir. I request Ambassador Sajjanhar, sir, your view on how India should go from here, because we are in a situation. I mean, let's put it, this is a situation which every one of us is facing, and we really can't, we have to play with what's on the deck. So, your views, sir. You're muted, sir.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, you're very right, General Shankar, because we have to play with the cards that are dealt with. We can try to change some of the cards in a manner, but then whatever is happening in other countries, we have to accept it at face value and try to deal with it. Very quickly, let me say a few things. I actually didn't know that RIC was also going to be a subject of discussion, but it is here. My view is that, I remember I was in Moscow at that time. I was the Charge in 1998 when Yevgeny Primakov, who was at that time the prime minister, he of Russia, he had suggested that the three countries should come together, RIC. At that time, in 1998, he was traveling to India. I had gone there to see him off at the airport, and he said this is the issue that he's going to raise in India. And we have had at the level of the foreign ministers meetings on this. And I think even at the summit level, I'm not so very certain. I'll have to check on that, whether there have been any interactions, meetings or not, but definitely at the foreign minister level. I think post Galwan, the sort of level of the distrust between India and China has become so much. I think that in the near future, maybe at the official level, at Ministry of External Affairs, joint secretaries, additional secretaries, there might be some meeting. But beyond that, maybe we might meet, like I remember in September 2020 in Moscow when the SCO meeting was taking place. Moscow was the chair of the SCO at that time. Then China and India had met. Wang Yi was there. Dr. Jaishankar, he had met him there. And Moscow, Sergei Lavrov was there. So on such occasions, on the sidelines of any regional meetings or international meeting might take place. But otherwise, under the current day scenario, where in my view, we don't see any move from China whatsoever to be sensitive or to be mindful or to be accommodating of India's interests. I don't see at all. And even things like, even on small little things, you see what happened on the issue of this
Passport.
Arunachal,
Girl.
lady who was passing from there. Even as far as small little things like trade issues, some rare magnets, tunnel boring machines, etc. So I don't see any intent on the part of China to be mindful of what India's interests are. And definitely on the bigger issues of UNSC, membership or NSG membership, etc., I don't see any give from their side. So I don't see much change there. The second issue about the neighborhood that General Murthy mentioned, and I agree with him. I agree with him completely. But as far as Pakistan is concerned, that is a problem that has been with us since 1947, and I don't think it will, go away in a hurry. We have to send out a message, as we did try to send through Op Sindoor, and I think the message has been taken, notwithstanding the muscle flexing that Pakistan might do, because it has got that support from the United States, but its capacity to do anything except for some attacks similar to what was done in Pahalgam, etc., of major kinetic nature. I think that is limited. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, sir, I would like you to draw your attention to some of the other countries in our neighborhood. Look at Sri Lanka, for instance. There also JVP came to power. And JVP is a party that has always been opposed to India. And AKD, the sort of venom that had been spewed by AKD himself and so on and so forth. But through our mature and steadfast policies, we have been able to get them totally on our side, in the sense the first country he visited after getting elected was India. The first foreign leader he invited was Prime Minister Modi. He declared from the Indian territory that he will not allow the Sri Lankan territory to be used for any anti-Indian activities. The Prime Minister Harini also, her first visit was to India. The point I'm making is that through our policies, we have been able to get even such a party and its government to be supportive of good relations with India. I will not go into details, but look at Maldives also. India Out campaign, it came. And there was such a furor that, when there was this whole thing about Lakshadweep, that from the political side, there should be some action move commentary statement against Maldives. We didn't do that. And now they again are on very good terms with India. Look at Afghanistan, Taliban after 2021. Again, our measured policy and diplomacy that has helped. The point I'm trying to make is that we had Dr. Jaishankar going and meeting Tariq Rahman when the funeral of Begum Khalida Zia took place. Discussions were held. Elections are to be held. We are, of course, rooting that Awami League should also be included. It should be an inclusive election that would increase the credibility of the results of the election. Let us see what happens. I think that whoever gets elected as an elected leader, if they are able to see that they need India, and India can be a beneficial and is a beneficial partner. We have given 8 to 10 billion dollars in terms of loans and grants and lines of credit and everything. So they need much more. They need to gain much more from us than they will be losing if they maintain an adversarial and hostile relations with us. The point I'm making is that we have again dealt with the situation that has been created by this non-elected dispensation of Professor Muhammad Yunus. We have dealt with it in a mature way, in a sober way, and let us see once the elections take place as to how the response of that government is. The final point I'll make is that I agree with Brigadier Sahgal when he said no regime change has taken place in Venezuela. It is only the top person has changed. Maybe he will not be able to come back, but the sort of protests and demonstration we are seeing in support of Maduro on the streets of Venezuela that have been evident today, I think that brings home to me that the path for the United States, whatever they might have been able to achieve on the third, the path forward is going to be a very tricky one, a very thorny one, and not an easy one. Jan Shankar.
I agree with you completely, sir. The path forward is going to be very rocky and very tricky. Your final comments, sir, Brigadier Sahgal, sir.
No, okay, thank you. No, I generally agree with whatever has been said, but my slight difference of view is that we need to have much more. We have to invest a little more in our neighborhood policy than we have been doing it. And I think Sri Lanka, Maldives is a good example, but equally bad examples are Nepal. Equally bad example is Bangladesh, and not because it's bad or so, but in the sense that we haven't shown the kind of maturity. We also want to understand one thing is that uh, as far as the global powers are concerned, they play in the maritime domain a lot. To them, the maritime domain is very important. But for India, the continental domain is the major aspect because all our challenges are in the continental domain. And if you look at the construct of South Asia, the continental domain overwhelms the maritime domain. And in that continental domain lies a major power in our north who are inimical to us, as mentioned during our conversation. So the question basically for us is how do we manage them and how do we create equities in them? It's not question of just managing them. We have to create equities. Equities basically doesn't mean that they follow our line. No, they are not inimical to our interest and they do not become shatterbelts which are exploited by global powers. This is what is happening in our neighborhood. So we have to be, I'm sorry, we have to be clear about these things. And this, some of these areas, we need to work a little more hard on this. And lastly, on the Chinese issue, while totally agree China remains a challenger, but we also must remain geographically, we are next to Chinese. Geographically, it is our neighbor. So we have to manage our relationship with China. No doubt, China has always stabbed us in the back. China has always tried to undermine us, but is the situation in which the unipolarity of the American power, which undermines even the Chinese power and also undermines the Russian power, and we are who are stuck in the middle, is there a scope for a better alignment of our interests amongst three of us? And if you're talking about the BRICS, can institutions like economic and trade instruments like BRICS can become some kind of an instrument? And my very last point is, we have to look at very closely what is happening in G20. Please look at it very closely. We are not looking at it closely, sir. There are alternative blocks which are coming up. There is an attempt to break up the G20 is going on. And in all this, I'm sorry to say, we are not a major player. We are a player. Yes, we are an important player, but we are not a major player. There are attempts being made to break up this whole structure of global south. And at my absolute point is, what is the Chinese global governance initiative going to be if the Chinese cannot protect its own interests? That's something everybody is going to ask. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. As you said, we are getting into a very tricky time uh, for many reasons. The small little action, militarily, it is almost, I mean, it's just a kidnapping or
Yeah.
extraction, right? But it has changed global dynamics. And we'll be talking of the various aspects of this for a long time to come. There is no doubt about it. There are many facets. We could talk of, like I said, we could talk of energy, we could talk of politics of Venezuela itself, we could talk of politics of US, you could talk of global politics, you could talk of the superpower competition and where we fit in or don't fit in. We could talk of what's going to happen in the area around us. But I think at the end of the day, a lot has changed with that one little thing. Like even for Venezuelans, the government is intact, but the situation has changed for them. So I think we are in for a thing, and I really thank all of you for having come up and given your points out so nicely. And I must tell all the viewers, I'm not going to take questions because we are well past time. Uh, we'll continue with this because this is a thing which will have its reverberation for quite some time to come. With this, I request General Gautam Moorthy, sir, your final views and you can close up the show.
Thank you very much, General Shankar. I'll just take off from where you said, and this is not the last we've heard on Venezuela or of Latin America. The US has stressed that it is our hemisphere, and it is a very, very strong message that they have sent to China, to Russia, and to Iran. And insofar as world leaders are concerned, I think Iran has to tone down their rhetoric against the US and Israel, because you can see that what the US is capable of. They bomb their nuclear plants. So, we are not discussing morality, as I've mentioned often. We are not here to discuss morality, but we're here to discuss repercussions. And rightly so, how does India navigate these very turbulent times? Thank you very much, General Shankar. Thank you, Brigadier Sahgal. Thank you, Ambassador Sajjanhar. And thank you, audience, for your patience and forbearance. Good night and Jai Hind.
Jai Hind.
Good night. Thank you. Thank you very much.